Today, I'm in القيروان, which is a city about an hour and a half away from the coast. This morning, I woke up in Essusa. I took a series of buses, mostly because I have no idea how the system works here, when I could have probably just taken one or two. But the important thing is that I made it in time to check out the Grand Mosque of القيروان. But right now, I'm inside the Grand Mosque of القيروان. This mosque is the oldest and is still the largest in North Africa. And more than that, it served as a model for all the other mosques that were built in this area. This mosque was commissioned by the Arab general Aqba ibn Nafi', who was responsible for much of the Arab conquests of North Africa. It was under his reign that these regions were brought under the sphere of Arab influence. It was Aqba ibn Nafi' who built the ornately designed pulpit that you see at the front of the mosque. It was the Aghlabid dynasty which then fulfilled the construction of the rest of the structure. And as you saw in the Tunis Old City at the Zaytuna Mosque, the mosque is uniquely Tunisian, even though it's meant to symbolize the expansion of Arab Islamic influence. And when I say it's uniquely Tunisian, it represents the layers of history which are unique to this piece of land. For example, when you look at the design, you see Corinthian Roman columns everywhere. It's these columns which are holding up the arches. And although arches are common in Islamic architecture, these Corinthian columns are not. They are unique to Tunisia. And so I was asking the caretaker of the mosque where it's brought from. And as expected, they're from the ruins of Roman sites nearby, from Dugga, from Carthage, etc. And so they were brought to be incorporated into the mosque as a way to once again meet Tunisians where they were at the moment. It was the Roman aesthetic, the Roman civilization, which they were used to. And so incorporating it with the Islamic ideology made it more palatable to the local people. In the pulpit, you also see the Kufic script of Arabic, as well as this more square, straight line minaret, as you have behind me. All of these designs were formed here in Tunisia and became a model for other mosques that you'll see across North Africa. There are a couple other historic sites in the city, and it's also got the whole Arab Old City, Medina look. But for now, what I would like to do is sit down, grab a coffee, grab some breakfast, and then we'll continue on with our sightseeing. So I haven't had breakfast yet, and I figured I would get something to eat since it's about 1 o'clock already. So I got myself a coffee, and I ordered couscous again. I mean, it's going to be couscous, probably 3 meals in a row, but the couscous is so good. Couscous is good in general, but in Tunis, with the harissa, it's spicy, it has more flavor. Ordered another fish couscous, and they brought over this soup, which I've got to ask them what's in it, because it's red, like has some herbs in it, and something that has the texture of like a grain or seeds.
It's smeed.
What is it? Smeed. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I was trying to ask the waiter to find out what exactly that grain is in that soup, because it was delicious. It was staying too put together to be couscous, and it wasn't really quinoa, because, I mean, quinoa wouldn't be here in Tunisia, but he says it's smeed, which I've heard of before when I was in Morocco, but I don't really know what the translation of that is, so I have to go look that up and let you know. But that soup was delicious. The waiter asked me if I wanted more, but look at this plate I've got in front of me. I'm about to pay for my lunch and a cafe latte that I got here. This is right outside of the mosque, and it's come out to 27 and 300 millim, so that's 27 dinar and 300 millim. So instead of the dinar being divided up to cents, where there's 100 cents in 1 dinar, it's millims, which is 1,000 in 1 dinar. So this is how I'm going to pay for it. Everything's pretty much cash here, so I have a 20 dinar, and then I'm going to have 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. Then I have 2 half dinars. And then I have 3 100 millim coins. That'll give me exact change. So this restaurant, Dar Lalla Habiba, also has a roof that overlooks the mosque. It's prayer time, so we have Friday prayer calls going on so I hope you can hear me. But I wanted to give you a look at the mosque from above, from this restaurant, as the call to prayer is going on. Around the Muslim world, you'll find places where local people will say this is the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th most holy place in Islam. That being after Mecca, after Medina, after Jerusalem. So people say that this is the 4th holiest spot in Islam. Now, I don't really understand how people arbitrarily assign rankings to holy sites, but I think it's more of a local conception of what's holy. So in the past, and even to some degree in the present, making the pilgrimage to Mecca was a really difficult task, reserved for only the select privileged few. However, because it is one of the main tenets of Islam is to make the Hajj, people might find local locations which are relatively more easy to access. So maybe they're coming from the greater Sahara area or from the Islamic Maghreb, and instead of going to Mecca, which would be a much more difficult journey, many might choose to make pilgrimage to Kairouan instead. And so perhaps the great mosque in Kairouan was assigned a de facto value because many people could not make the pilgrimage to Mecca and instead made it to the next holiest but also accessible site here in Kairouan. So I left the shade and quiet of the old city. I figured it might be easier than getting lost in the maze of the alleyways to come outside of the old city walls, get on the street, and then take the straight road down to the zawiya, which we'll hopefully get there. Hopefully it'll be open. But the sun is just so hot and so strong right now. It's loud. It's like a bit difficult to walk on the sidewalks here when they exist. And I stopped by a supermarket to grab some water because it is hot. And as you can see, I'm like sweating a ton. But it's just a short walk down the street, and then hopefully we can get there soon. There's definitely something to be said for how traditional architecture in neighborhoods like those of the old city have been adapted for the weather and living conditions here. For example, it stays cool in the old city. There's shade, and you can't really feel the sunlight too hard. But then you step out into these French-built, French-designed new cities, wide streets, but the sun shines hard and it's really difficult to escape. So I finally made it to the zawiya and found some shade, so I'm just taking a break here. But right at the entrance to the zawiya, there was a ceremony going on with the carriage, and I noticed it was a boy dressed up. So I asked some of the family members around just what the celebration was, and they said mutahara, which literally in Arabic just means purification. That was a traditional boy's circumcision ceremony, actually. So you can see he was all dressed up and received a lot of presents and sort of the star of the day for the entire family and friends. Now that we're still in the shade, I'll tell you a little bit more about what we came here for. That is the zawiya of Sidi Sahaba. It is believed that one of the Prophet's companions is buried here, and that this companion actually is believed to carry around 3 hairs of the beard of the Prophet Muhammad. With the relics of the Prophet Muhammad and the fact that one of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad is believed to be buried here, this is actually a very significant site for Tunisians. Zawiya itself is a really difficult term to translate into English. It actually means a corner, but it's a Sufi influenced term used for a complex which serves as a mosque, a madrasa, as well as a mausoleum. As we'll see when we go inside, this particular zawiya is from the 17th century and features an ornate mix of lavish Mediterranean, Greek Roman mosaic styles, as well as Turkish styles from the Ottoman era. Now we're inside the ornately decorated and tiled zawiya here. Take a look. So the guards were actually trying to stop me up front, asking me why I was recording and just telling them I was talking to myself and recording myself. They were asking me whether I have a license to be recording and all of that. But then when I told them I'm traveling, they asked me if I'm Muslim. That I told them I'm not a journalist. They were fine with everything and they let me in. They were like, please go ahead and record inside. So the guard, who's now trying to be my best friend, told me that this is probably the most comfortable space to be when it's hot outside, because this place stays cool with the stones. And of course, that all makes sense because those people who designed this building, this indigenous building, was made for the climate here, was made for the conditions here. And of course, you see all this tile work, which is typical all around the Mediterranean. It might look familiar to you if you've ever been to Morocco or even to Portugal. You'll see a lot of this blue tile work, but it is all around us here.
وهذا الصحابي الجليل هو اسمه الحقاني عبيد الله بن الأرقم البلوي. هذا من أهل بيعة الرضوان اللي بيعوا الرسول بيعة الرضوان وحضر مع صلح الحديبية. الصحابي الجليل هذا اللي جاب لنا الإسلام فهمت الله، وكان يعمل الحجامة لرسول الله. الصحابي هذا كان يعمل الحجامة فهمت، الحجامة ينحلوا دم. الصحابي الجليل هذا توفى عام 34 هجري ويحمل معه شعارات من شعارات سيدنا محمد، وشعارات عظمها مدفونين معه في القلنسوبة، واللي يموت في سبيل الله لا يوصل دفن مع شعارات الرسول. ثم رسالة محمدية، ثم رسالة محمدية، الرسالة دي بتاع خط الرسول، الرسالة دي موجهة لأخباط بتاع مصر. فهمت؟ الرسالة دي الفحمتها وقلت بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم من محمد بن عبد الله للمخوخ عديم القبض، السلام على المتبع الهدى. أما بعد فإني يدعوك بدعوة الإسلام، اسلم تسلم يؤتيك الله أجرك مرتين، فإن توليت فعليك ما يفجع القبض. يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم إلا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا ولا نتخذ بعضنا بعضا أرباب من دون الله، فإن تولوا فقل أشهد بأننا مسلمون محمد رسول الله. وهذه آخر خطبة للرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم، وهذا كله أثر النبي، طبعا أثر النبي. والخطبة هذه ذات تبع أندلسي دايرة بآيات قرآنية. هذه قصيدة من الخطبة قصيدة إنه مات في أحد أصحابي إلا وقعهم يوم القيامة. نعم القيروان يربع ثلاثا لمكة المدينة القدس القيروان. القيروان هي منارة إسلامية. هذه الخلاصة سألتكم استمتعتم بالزيارة ومرحبا بك في مقام الصحابي الجليل.
شكرا يا أستاذ. To mention while we're here at the zawiya its connection to Sufism. So Sufism was a mystical and is a mystical form of Islam, which was really popular in the peripheries of the Islamic world, both again in the West and in the East, as a means to help local populations outside of the Arabian Peninsula be able to connect to Islamic customs by way of merging them with their own indigenous cultures and customs. So mausoleums like this became places of worship and respect as local people came here to use intermediaries in humans to guide their connections to God. And so zawiyas were places of learning where students of Sufism could come, learn from their Sufi teachers, and then also pay respects to their ancestors or their guiding philosophers before them. In both North Africa and in South Asia, Sufism forms an unorthodox way to practice Islam. However, though it is unorthodox, it is highly spiritual and meaningful to the practicers. Actually, it is more meaningful because it combines local practices and beliefs with that of the ideology which came from the Middle East. The Sufi mystical connection allowed for practicers to continue their existing beliefs, but find parallels between existing beliefs and those of the Quranic ones. The result is that the Islam practiced in these areas, which are far from the center of the Arabian Peninsula, are very different from the Orthodox traditions as they were spread from the Middle East. The unfortunate thing is that as Arab Gulf influence spreads, more so Arab Gulf money spreads, a lot of these indigenous practices and beliefs and indigenous forms of Islam are being eradicated or looked down upon. as being less pure or less Islamic than the cultural practices which have been adopted in the Arabian Gulf. So after spending the day in القيروان, one of the holiest cities of Islam here in North Africa, I'm back outside where I'm staying here in Susa. It's great being back by the sea. You can feel the breeze already. So I was just walking back to my hotel and I see that there is a cafe here that's all the way up there. That spot should have a great view and I'm definitely feeling like getting some caffeine. So I'm gonna head up there, get something to drink, head back to my hotel and get some rest for today. I hope you all enjoyed this trip to Kairouan. I had a lot to see, a lot to learn from all the amazing historic sites in that city. If you at all enjoyed this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next episode of